let's start the session without any delay. I would request our chairman CA Bengaluru sir to escort CA Heena Kausar madam, our speaker of the session, onto the dais, and
I'll call you later, sir. I'm calling the night.
request the chairman to give a floral bouquet to the speaker. It's an honor for me to introduce the speaker of the day. CA Heena Kausar AP is a partner of Guru and Jana LLP, a 700 plus member chartered accountancy firm with over 15 years experience in corporate audits and the implementation of internal financial controls. A chartered accountant with additional certifications in IFRS, Ind AS and peer review ICR. She specializes in statutory audits, tax audits, Ind AS implementation, financial consolidations, and brings deep domain expertise in retail and services sector. She is an active speaker at professional forums, ICR platforms, study circles, and sharing insights on audit and financial reporting. Beyond her professional work, she has served as trustee of Mahetriya Guru and Jana Trust, supporting education and mentoring initiatives for children. We welcome you, ma'am, and mic is all yours.
As I was saying that, from the morning till now the crowd keep coming down, and also to hold the patience till the end to hear out what I am going to tell. Thank you for being there. So my topic today is compliances with audit documentation. So the first question which comes into mind is, naವೆಲ್ಲ audit ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ entire of our this thing. What is that again we have to hear on audit documentation? And there are enough of seminars which have happened on audit evidence, audit documentation, how to do all of that. But what is that we have to do in a peer review? So from morning there are various speakers who have spoken upon various things like what is Form 1, how do we fill various documents and technical, ethical standards, everything. But what is that we have to do with the audit documentation? As a peer reviewer, when you are going to the practicing unit, there are three things which we are going to certify. One, like how you do the ICFR implementation. And during the ICFR implementation, you go and tell the client, we'll implement it in three phases. One with the entity level control, one with the operational controls, and other with the IT controls. Similar way, I always feel peer review is also designed. One with the entity level controls, which the PU, that is the practicing unit, has in terms of the organizational policy, ethical policies, training and other things. That means to say that how robust as a practicing unit for the firm is gearing up to take up the higher audits. Then there is something operational controls which are there. Those are what I define it as an audit documentation controls. So those are the ones which are very critical to verify. Having said all of the processes which you are there, whether you are having the training requirement, policies, or the HR requirement, how robust is your operational control? So what does that mean? As in peer reviewer, you have to go back and check whether they have taken exact number of samples what is specified as per the statistical sampling. Is it that what we need to do? Maybe we can be interactive so that we can hear out from each one of you. Is it the purpose of going to a peer review and then seeing it?
I am in a meeting. Can you call me?
Do we have to do that? Do we have to go to the peer reviewer and tell how did you give a qualified opinion? Is it the purpose of peer review?
I'll call you once I reach my
Judging of the quality of the audit.
Yes. So true. Actually, there is a small demarcation. We don't have to go and ask the peer review firm, why did you give a qualified or unqualified? We have to see how robust are the systems in the audit, so that whatever the small minute issues are there, those are highlighted to the partner, engagement partner, and the engagement partner, and with whatever the policies which the firm has, they are able to do a quality audit. That is the purpose of the peer review which is there. And the entire presentation is based on the reporting which as a reviewer we have to do. So when we submit the peer review report to the peer review board, there are a report which is coming like an independent audit report. We have to give an audit report to the peer review board, where we have to give a qualified or an unqualified opinion based on the controls which the entity is having, that is the practicing unit is having. Along with the peer review report, when we are giving the final audit report, we have to submit something called Annexure 1 and Annexure 2. Annexure 2 details out what as a peer reviewer you have checked on the audit requirements of a practicing unit. So basically what the entire presentation is based on Annexure 2, because that requires a lot of checklist. It is a checklist where they are telling about 8 to 10 areas which we need to see. One from the audit documentation, materiality, or from the evidence which the entity has collected. How have they collected? How have they documented? More so, how are they demonstrating to the peer reviewer? So these are the things which we need to see at the time of the peer review, and this forms the very critical part of it. Though initially you may think on the technical, ethical, everything, so that may be taken up on the day 1 of the review. But day 2 and day 3 of the review will go mainly on the audit documentation verification, because that is the major part of the peer review which is there. So one thing which is there, which I have noticed also, is because we have been, our firm is under peer review from almost 10 to 15 years now, and we have been facing the peer reviewers, and I as a peer reviewer also have been going to multiple firms. So one thing which we have noticed is peer review has been evolving. So if you see the year, maybe long time back, maybe 10 years, 12 years back, when the peer review used to happen, we used to never know. The reviewer used to come, 2 days, it used to happen. But recently, because the peer review documentation and the requirement has so much evolved, entire firms, we are a partnership firm of 10 partners, almost all the partners are involved in the peer review. That is the importance which the peer review, because of the evolving checklists and requirements, it has happened. So entire firm was there with the peer reviewer to tell, okay, this is what we each one of them do. So coming on to the peer review, there are 2 things which we have to see. One is on the compliance procedure, and second one is on the substantive procedure. What the speakers have spoken from morning is basically on the substantive procedures. That is compliance with the technical, professional and ethical standards which are there. So these have been spoken from morning. What I am going to speak is on the compliance procedure. So what does compliance procedure mean? In the compliance procedure, what we do is the testing of the designs of the practicing unit and how the practicing unit has implemented controls, not with regard to the operational or the back-end operations of the entity, but with regard to the audit. Suppose when there is a team which is going to the audit, are the team well aware of what they need to do? If they are well aware of what they need to do, is there any document which will demonstrate us saying that this is what is done by the team? So basically, whenever we go for the peer review also, or in our firms as well, we tell saying that 100% transparent, we have all the data and other things. But those are mainly with the audit work papers. What as a mid-sized firm, most of the firm lack is the planning checklists or the execution checklists or demonstrating how the planning has happened. Many times when I go to firm, they are telling saying that we have an audit planning done. We do the audit planning. ಹೇಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ? ನಾನು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, ನಮ್ಮ ಟೀಮಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ. ಸರ್ ಏನು ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್ ಇದೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಇಲ್ಲ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಮೂರಲ್ಲಾಗಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀವಿ. So how as a reviewer it becomes comfortable for us to say that it is happening or not. That is the thing which is there. So when we as a peer reviewer go, we have to see whether these kind of documents are there. So these are common techniques which are used by all the firms during the audit and which we have also been implementing, and it has been there in most of our processes. That these common procedures are there from the day we took up CA. That is the day 1 when we opened our auditing textbooks, it are there: inspection, observation, external confirmations, recalibration, re-performance, analytical procedures, inquiry. All these are audit procedures which are there. But all this documented is what the job of the reviewer is there. And we have to ensure that these are there when we go for the peer review. So when I tell inspection, it may be at the time of stock audit or on the fixed asset audit, PPE audit, the team would be going. But then does the PU has the documentation that the staff which are there from the PU is also there along with the company people while doing the physical verification. How do you document it? there is a physical verification report. But when it is signed only by the company people. It is not signed by the person who has attended it. So there we get a lack of documentation saying that whether the auditor also has attended the stock audit at 31st of March or whether they have been a part of the PPE audit. So that is the work of a reviewer, or in case the PO is not done that, guide them to do that. So there are two phases. One, when a small firm comes in, they may not be doing this. As a reviewer, we should go and tell we have to do that so that we can issue the clean report. Number of samples to be selected, I think this is spoken in the morning sessions, but I'll quickly tell what are the number of samples which we need to take. When you go to the peer review, like how we go for an audit and we give a requirement list, we have to give a requirement list to the peer review practicing unit. So these are the samples. How do we select? Total number of samples in case of statutory audits are 5, in case of which will include listed entities and the public interested entities. So public interested entities is not defined in the guidance note, but wherever the public interest is there, it is left little open to include whatever is not included can come in there. So that is what is there. In case the number of audits are less than 5, 100% of the sample is covered. In case the PO is handling the bank's financial institution, 1 in that case. In case the practicing unit has more than 1 partner and all of them have signed the assurance engagements, be it statutory audit, tax audit, internal audit, certifications or any other thing. As a reviewer, when picking the sample, you have to ensure that we pick up sample from each of the partner. I am going little speed because of the paucity of time. In case anyone knows, you can ask me a question. Apart from that, we have to select all the type of engagement, whether it is stat, internal, GST or certifications or 3C, B3C, A3CD, whatever, wherever the assurance services is there, we have to select one from each of the pattern. Then in case the practicing unit has branches across, we have to select samples from each of the branch because we are certifying as a unit as a whole and not as an individual branch. In case there is one client which is contributing 15% or more revenue to the practicing unit, it so happens that there is a big group which the company, which the PO is handling, and that only that one the company would be giving the maximum revenue to the PO. At that time, we have to mandatorily take that practice and the entity for the peer review. And peer review comes in a batch of 3 years. So each of the year we are supposed to select. It cannot be that banks are there in 1 year, listed entities are there in the same year. I select everything in the 1 year only. Because when you submit the report to the peer review board, we have to give them what are the samples selected, how we have selected. In case it is not satisfactory to the peer review board, they write back again saying that the sample selection is not adequate. At that time, it becomes a rework to the peer reviewer to go back again and then do it. Mind me, peer review board is very, very active. For everything what you write, for everything what you tell, they come back in the same day. Very, very prompt response from the institute. So in case there are any advisory, that is QRP or FRRP issued to the practicing unit, those kind of reports has to be collected and those audits have to be seen in the peer review. So any advisories you need to take. These are the minimum criteria of sample selection which you need to take. Once the sample is selected, usually the PU takes some time. This is one more additional check which we need to do. There are cases which I have noticed also in some or one of the firm wherein, yes.
In the previous slide, there was regarding the advisory cases. If the FRRB is issued for 3 or 4 cases, all 3-4
cases has to be taken. So this is one thing which is an additional exercise because the UDN will be there for all the assurance services. Better to take the list of assurance UDNs generated from the institute portal itself. Ask the PU to give it. So we know what are the nature of assurances and how many assurances are there. And match the UDN to the sample which you have selected. It will help that you are taking the authenticated document. In one case where I have selected the sample, there was a UDN mismatch between what they have generated and what they have put. It was a clerical error. I don't know how it is addressed, but that is how it is. So this is the annexure one, as I told, when you are giving the independent, like an independent audit report, we are supposed to give peer review report. In the peer review report, there are 3 things, annexure 1, annexure 2 and AQMM. Annexure 2 is which emphasizes on the audit. And there are the 7 parameters under which we need to report under the annexure 2. So one is on the quality control, ethical requirement and independence, which is enough spoken about. Yes.
Ma'am, with respect to the UDIN, whatever the practice unit has generated, and they are also submitting the form 1, in that the list is there. Whether the peer review board is going to cross verify both the numbers are reconciling, or how is it going?
So they ask for the reconciliation,
Correct.
but I am not sure on what percentage or how they verify. But usually they ask for the UDN reconciliation.
Because maybe in the form they might have mentioned, let us say 600, whereas the 650 UDINs have been generated.
Yes.
So in that context, I'm asking.
So
this.
that's why usually what we do is we ask FD partners what, there is a little challenge there. Sometimes what happens in the firm of 7-8 partners, 1 or 2 partners would have left during the year.
Yes.
And at that point of a time, the firm, if it is in good terms, they may get an UDN list from those partners. Otherwise, it becomes a challenge to get an UDN list from them as well. So when they are reporting, usually sometimes they miss out on those retiring partners or anything. So when we go as a peer reviewer, we need to see who are the, and we need to report also in case there is a change in the 3-year period, if there is a change in the composition of the firm, and then we can take it. And when we are reporting it to the institute, we can take the UDN reconciliation.
Thank you.
So these are the 7 parameters which have to be reported in Annexure 2. One is on the quality control, ethical and independence, which is spoken about from morning. Then there is an engagement documentation, audit planning and risk assessment, audit sampling and other selection testing procedures, materiality, audit documentation and audit evidences. These are the things which we need to report. There are specific questions on this. It is a proper checklist which is there, and basis that we need to do. So when we see this, it is very much self-explanatory of what we need to report under that. But however, when we come, I'll just briefly run through each of the areas. What is that we need to tell in the gist of it? And most of us, we would have done audits here. That's why we are coming here for getting the peer review certificate and have a fair idea of what we need to see. But when we go as a reviewer, so this is what we need to see. In case of an engagement document which is there. So what is that we are going to ask? Okay. So based on the checklist, it is asking us to verify whether the entity which is under audit has carried forward audit work papers. That means to say that if I am doing the audit for March 25, March 24, do we have the audit work papers? Not specifically the work papers. Is there any issue which has to be carried forwarded from 24 and to be looked into 25? For example, in the year when you did 24 audit, there is an inventory qualification which is there, where you have given a management letter to the company saying that, because if you do not want the qualification next year, you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. And that is the management letter which you would have issued. So that becomes a primary area, and that has to be carried forwarded. So now we are not going to see whether this is everything is carried forwarded, but what we are going to see is whether the practicing unit has a system in place to see whether the previous year issues have been carried forwarded into the current year. How do you do that? So the PU has to represent you with the work papers where it says that the initial audit planning that they are doing, there is a paragraph wherein the previous year issues have been carried forwarded and documented. Basically, the entire peer review exercise is on the demonstration of the documentation which is there. And hence, if the PO is able to establish and demonstrate to you, I have this. In case they have an audit ERP, it's very easier because the ERP itself will take the flow. In case they have manual things which are their Excel checklist or anything like that, those needs to be provided. Institute has given a guidance note on audit of work papers. Please, when we go for peer review, in case it is not there with you, please see once what is the kind of checklist which the institute has published. It is quite elaborate. In case we are implementing for our firm, it can be a guidance for us also to take the entire checklist and implement it. So those are the one which are the monitoring procedures, and the second one which comes in the engagement document is the monitoring procedures. That means to say over the period of audit, that may be 2 months, 3 months, how often has the engagement partner gone to the review? The engagement mentor saying that every now and then I am with the call with the team. ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ರಿಯಲ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಅಪ್ಡೇಟ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ ನನ್ನ ಹತ್ರ ಎಲ್ಲ ಗೊತ್ತು ಏನಿದೆ ಅಂತ. But are you documenting it? So when you are going for the review, is the engagement partner comment or the manager comments documented? If it is documented, there has to be a proof. Literally, there has to be a documentation for all the processes which the practicing unit has done during the audit. So that is where it is there. So the checklist which have been given by the institute demonstrates all of these. So that is one this thing. In case practicing as a reviewer when you go, you please tell them these are the checklists available, please do it. Then there are any changes, version controls if it is there, how the PU is monitoring the version control and tracking the changes which are there. We all know how problem the version is. So if you see the version, number of audit workings version, it starts from 1 and it ends from 25. In between there may be a version of 13, 1.1.1 also which is there. So that is the kind of issues which we face during the audit. So when an engagement partner is signing, how confident the engagement partner is there that he is signing the final version. So what is the kind of control which the practicing unit is having? Because work is done by articles, semi-qualified, there may be chartered accountants who have left in between and gone. Okay. So the work papers sometimes go along with the person who has left. That is the process gap which a practicing unit has. It has to have a system wherein even though the person leaves, the process should take care of it. That is where the peer review emphasizes most of the things. So coming on to the audit planning and risk assessment which is there. Again, when an engagement is started or an audit assurance services is started, there has to be enough of audit planning. It happens in every firm, irrespective of small or big firm it happens. But how does it happen? It happens very much informally. Sir, karitare. ಈ ಥರ ಆಡಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಯು ವುಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟೋಲ್ಡ್ ಇದು ಮ್ಯಾನುಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಚರಿಂಗ್, ಇದು ರಿಟೇಲ್, ಅವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಇವರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದಿ ಆಡಿಟ್ ಪ್ಲಾನಿಂಗ್ ವಿಚ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ಸ್. ಬಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಇಟ್ ದಟ್ ವಿಚ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್? No. Whatever the audit planning meeting happens, it has to be documented. There has to be a minutes. The practicing unit, wherever you are reviewing, has to demonstrate the audit planning checklist to you, wherein it is told saying that the planning meeting has happened. In the planning meeting, the reviewer has or the engagement partner has to tell the team what are the critical areas which needs to be seen in the audit and how many man days they will be using, what are the kind of audit techniques or the sampling techniques which need to be used, and then we have to talk to the management. That is one thing very, very critical which is there, though it was highlighted in the earlier slides also, earlier speakers. So when we go for the audit, usually what happens is tally backup baratte, books of accounts irutte, requirement list kodstiri, then some junior will go start the audit. No. The peer reviewer has to talk to the people, those charged with governance. That is the words used. We have to talk to the people, those charged with governance. That is the directors or the partners or the people or the finance head who is able to give you the valid information about the company. That means to say that day one when the audit is starting, there has to be a meeting with the company representatives to understand what has happened in past 1 year. What are the major changes? It so happens many a times, and it is helpful also, I'll tell you why. Many times we notice sometimes we have completed the audit. At the end of the audit, when you are signing, you call to the director and then say, then he'll tell, sir, now one company take over ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ, ಅದು accounts ಇಂದ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. Okay, it happens. That is because we have not spoken to the people who are charged with the governance. At that time, audit sign ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ, ಈಗ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಲ್ಲ, ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಬರೀ ಕನ್ಸಾಲಿಡೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡೋದಷ್ಟೇ. This is what is the response which the company gets. But in case we are doing the planning properly, execution properly, we can get it, and that is what the institute expects us to do also. The kick-off meeting and the audit planning memorandum, identification of the risks. There is again a checklist which defines how the risks have to be documented in the audit work papers, and then if there are any fraud-related activities, if the previous report has there is any fraud on the company by the employees or any other vendors, or during the audit in case you notice any fraud, that has to be clearly noted, and this has to be documented, and how as a firm you have dealt with the fraud reporting also needs to be seen. So the firm has to give you the fraud reporting checklist and then how they have documented it. Understanding in case of a legal and regulatory requirement, this has to be done at the beginning, and the practicing unit has to demonstrate it. In case there is specific, in case of an NBFC, RBI becomes very critical. In case of a distilleries, customs become very critical. Those kind of regulatory things, in case something to be seen, we have to document it. These documents have to be given. See, apart, these are from the audit planning. Then comes on the risk assessment. Again, it is the same documents which is there. There may be significant risks which the PU has noticed, and then that has to be documented via the checklist which is there. So it speaks also on the audit sampling. So there may be a question with all of our minds saying that audit sampling is something which we have been doing the day when we have qualified or when we are doing the articleship. So we go, we ask the tally backup and random sampling or whatever it is the sampling, we do it. And then voting happens. Based on that, the audit work papers are taken. And this is the document which the many of the firms give us when we go for the practicing unit. Whether this is the document required for a peer reviewer to certify sampling is happening properly? No. The audit work paper does not demonstrate how the sampling has been taken. Whether it is a random sampling, whether it is a statistical sampling, it is not documented in the work paper. So as a reviewer, when you go and ask the work paper, and if they give voting, and one sheet also in a verbit shows we have verified if they give us, that will not suffice the requirement of a peer review manual or the annexure to which they are telling. Here we ask how the practicing unit has done the sampling, whether it is statistical, random or on an ad hoc basis. How are they covering the entire risks of the sample selection which is there? That is what is to be documented and then demonstrated in the work paper, and that is what is required to see. And if they give saying that one voting document, no, that is not the requirement or not the standard requirement which is there. So there are various codes, and if there is a going concern issue, if you see anyways the going concern parameters are not satisfied, that is the net worth has become negative or the current liabilities have become more than the current asset, then it gives trigger to the company to give a EOM or material uncertainty on the going concern paragraph. But now whether the PU has given or not, in the sample which you have selected, you need to see whether the going concern is affected. And what do we ask? There is a going concern checklist or there is a going concern parameter which the PU has to fill to tell that boss, we have checked this and we are satisfied, and this is how we are satisfied that going concern is clear. Many a times it is only inspection which happens in the audit. They say okay, they show the calculation to the engagement partner and they discuss orally, mutually, and then the audit closes. But the peer review comes after 3-4 years and they ask for the documentation. At that point of the time, the person who has done the audit is not there, and the engagement partner will have too many things to remember, neither they will remember. So that is where, like how we tell the companies whenever we go for the audits, a document will. Same thing with the audits, documents will. Materiality threshold, many of the mid-size firms do 100%, they do not see the materiality itself. So if it is a smaller audit, maybe 100% verification happens. But then that needs to be documented somewhere. Materiality, there is a specific materiality calculation which is there. There is again a guidance note which is there on materiality from the institute. They have given rolled out the templates also which is there, how the materiality has to be calculated. Whether the entity which you are going for the audit, because you will be taking the biggest client. So obviously it will not be one client which is having 10 crore or 5 crore. It will always be a client with 100 crore or 150 crore turnover. Then materiality criteria becomes very easier to check. Whether the company, the PU is able to demonstrate you how they have taken the materiality, whether they have taken the materiality based on the revenue, expense or profit before tax, what is the criteria which they have taken, and whether they are satisfying the clear trivia which is there. If there are any uncorrected misstatements which are there in the materiality discussion, whether the PU has documented. 99% of us, we do not document the uncorrected misstatement because we will agree with the client, okay, entry tagota hai na sir, we will ignore it. But that needs to be documented in the books saying that we have not taken this because it is an uncorrected misstatement. Many times in the audit purpose they will write not material hence ignored. But those are the uncorrected misstatements which are there. Right? So unless we total it and see whether it is matching the trivia, to give a qualification needs to be verified. These are again something very basic things which as an auditor which we would have taken, but then whether again the PU is able to demonstrate. There was one review which I had done recently. There were a lot of issues in the clients which are there. So they well maintain ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ issues whatever during the audit. Mail ಇದೆ. Okay. So mail ಇದೆ sir. Maybe you can extract. I was just trying to help them out. You extract and give me, I'll take it as a documentation. They have multiple people have sent multiple mails, multiple times. And those, how will you document at the end when there is a review which is happening? So those are the kind of gaps which comes in the audit documentation or in the evidence which is there. There is an actuarial valuation taken, there is an internal auditor report we rely. But then those, how are we basing our trust on those reports are not documented in the work papers. For example, if there is an actuarial valuation, it is very clearly said how we can verify it. And it is said in various documents of the institute as well. Whether the peer review practicing unit has kept those checklists is what we need to verify. If there are any external confirmations obtained, we have to see those external confirmations. We have to see whether those external confirmations are sufficient for the audit and the work papers are demonstrating those controls. So those are the things which are there, and also on the accounting estimates and other things. I am wrapping up little bit of a faster because of the paucity of time, but I have covered most of the things what is coming in the checklist. So maybe I can, if you have any questions you can ask, but at a closing note, what I would want to add is, peer review basically requires us to demonstrate like how we require the client to demonstrate us. So when we go for an audit or when we go for a testing of design or testing of controls, we ask for a client to do a walkthrough of the process, walkthrough of documents and give by help of the documents. Same thing is what the peer reviewer is expected to do. As a peer reviewer, we need to go to the firm, check whether they have adequate controls in place so that the final report comes flawless. Thank you all. Any questions?
This urine, what are the main things we have to look into it when they give the urine list?
Urine tracker basically will
You
have.
can have 5, 6, 10 to 15 columns.
Yes.
In case of let's say confirmation of account bank statements, right? So when we are able to, like clients is able to give us the bank statement directly downloaded from the portal, like their bank portal directly, they are able to see. Then is still confirmation of account is required.
Yes, sir. First I'll finish this and then I'll go. So when you see the UDN tracker will have the assurance service list also. It will have statutory audit, tax audit, certificates, everything. So basis that you can ask the practicing unit to give you a summarized one which is there. Because it will go into multiple pages and multiple this thing, and many times we get lost. You can ask the practicing unit to sort it out based on the service and on the year wise, which will help us to betterly pick up the samples from the UDN tracker. And coming on to the bank confirmation, sir, there is very clear guidance. Even if we get a bank statement, 100% we have to get a bank confirmation. It has to be a direct confirmation, and that is the mandatory requirement.
CC is able to giving us the downloaded one in front of us.
No, sir, then also it is required. I'll tell you why also. We have had instances where there is an embezzlement of funds which has happened by the person who is there, accountant. Somehow he is able to get away with the bank statement and not give the confirmation. At the end of the year, when it's not for the account, I've heard of this. But at the time when we go for the audit, or later when the company wanted to pay to the vendors, there is no money. And that is only one thing which is there. Though sometimes they download and give, the major frauds happen only in the bank confirmations. At least there are plenty of things which are to be read about. That is why, in fact, they tell direct confirmations. In fact, few cases I tell the team, go to the bank with the company people, get the confirmation. In fact, for the proof, we take the photograph also. That's why, because in one of the reviews there was a point saying that how do you confirm this is a direct confirmation? I told sir, nam office ke bandi illa. So they asked us to keep the courier copy also, that it has come directly to the firm.
Usually we ask the bank to send the bill directly to us.
Yes, that is 100% proper actually. That is the best thing to get a confirmation.
So in that case, as a peer reviewer, you will flag this as a deficiency or issue a preliminary report saying that
Yes, in the preliminary report you need to tell.
maybe even for debtors reconciliation,
Yes.
confirmation and
Yes. It asks specifically whether the PU has taken external confirmations.
Yes.
At that time we have to mention that in the preliminary report, saying that it is not there.
This when this audit manual is important. Which are the scenarios when the audit manual is important?
So, yeah.
PO units.
Yes, it is 100% required because the first step when you go to the peer review audit is asking for a quality manual. So because that quality manual will give an overview of what are the kind of controls which the practicing unit is having, like the leadership controls or the ethical controls. that will give a roadmap how the engagement partner or the review partner or the strategic partner, whatever name they call, how are they having the roles divided in the organization and who is responsible for what. And it is a mandatory requirement that every practicing unit should have a quality control manual.
And yes, even audit policy and all, everything you must have, or like we
The
can.
audit policies will not be there. The SQC manual, when you read the SQC manual guidance which is given by the institute, it will demonstrate 8 areas which have already been taken. And it will ask you how to prepare the QC manual. They are given few QC manuals also at the end as a demonstration. If you see leadership, they'll ask specific questions basis which we can actually document it.
So you mean to say every PU units should have a mandatory manual on the audit manuals basically?
Yes. Audit manual, not audit manual, QC manual. So because audit will become restricted to these areas. QC will cover leadership, training, client acceptance.
But for the small size of firms, it is not feasible to have all these things. So what do you suggest on that?
So it's like IFC is applicable for companies which are 50 crores and more. But there are companies who have defaulted in filing the AOC for. And you go and tell IFC BECO. That time you will mandatorily ask for the RCM, no sir.
Yes.
Similar way, if you want to have a peer review certificate, whether the firm is big or small, you need to have. That is why it's mandatory for 4 or above partners, assuming that the roles and responsibilities are divided among the partners. So it is a mandatory thing. Maybe if you see bigger firms, that the QC manual comes almost a bundle like a booklet. In case of a small firm, they can make it smaller paragraphs.
Thank you.
Ma'am, one question with respect to the practice unit being a proprietorship concern, because I think some of the practice units are having that.
Yes.
I just wanted your.
In that case, not all the criteria will apply, but to the extent criteria apply, they should have bare minimum audit workings and the checklist. And in that case, what will happen is it's like a one-man company where everything is approved by the director. Same thing, the partner would approve everything which is there.
Yeah, because EQRC and all will not be applicable.
EQCR, sir, engagement quality review,
Right.
will come for all the listed
Listed
entities
entities.
and all public interest entities. So again, public interest entities is to be defined. If the proprietor has applied because of such kind of a criteria, then EQCR becomes must.
And madam, is that possible like we can get some audit manual form
Yes.
draft from there?
I can share it with us. I can share it.
And one question which I should not ask at the fag end.
Yes, no.
What is the liability of the peer reviewer if the client, PO's client, some fraud happens? Finally, they will say even our firm has been peer reviewed, even our peer reviewer is responsible.
So
Because
as
it
an
happens
auditor,
like that.
no.
When fraud happens in the client's place, PO's client, they will immediately say, oh, it has been audited. Then the auditor, the PO will say, it is already peer reviewed, they also gone through our books, so nothing wrong on us.
No, so there's a small, Chinese wall which is there. What is a peer reviewer's work which has to be done versus what is an auditor work to be done? Peer reviewer is only checking the controls in the practicing unit to ensure that the report which comes in at the final is a good report. That is what the institute is ensuring. That whenever anybody is doing the audit, they should have enough of controls. So I am not going, that is why in the beginning, first question I actually asked was, are you going to check the review report, why the independent audit report, why a practicing unit is giving a qualified report or an adverse report? That is not my job. My job is to ensure that when he is giving an adverse report, does the firm has an audit committee or they are having external advisors which will advise the firm, boss, this adverse report is valid. So that is what is our job. My job is not to tell why you gave a qualification, you could have given a UOM, that is not my job. My job is to see when I am giving an audit report, qualified audit report, does the firm has enough of systems to ensure that this qualification is a valid qualification. And nobody can point out the finger on us because we are not going to see the numbers or certify anything.
Because what happened nowadays, things are going out of control. They are going to even police station. You
So
know,
there will be
CS are back to
another
police
scenario
station. Yeah.
which is there. In case the peer reviewer does not do the work properly and is very much with the practicing unit and gives a clean report, ICI will ask you a question. Saying that how did you give the report? Any other things? Yes. One 26.
So, problem is that in that case, there are many small firms which are not following the, will not be taking the environment, they will not be taking, because they are very small activity. So, in that case, how can give a clean peer certificate to those firms?
No, nobody is asking us to give a clean report. The peer review manual is very, very clear. Either you give a qualified report or you give an unqualified report. We are free to express our opinion.
Okay, so in that case, even the very small firm, proprietary firm who are just planning on bank audit in very small activity, they also need to have their engagement letter and
Yes.
RS.
Yes, 100%. Engagement letter is very, very basic requirement which lays down what are the terms and conditions which needs to be there for an engagement to be obtained. Very, very clearly laid out, SA 240 is there, which specifies clearly how do we have to take an engagement letter. In fact, many times TC statutory audit also, people are taking engagement letter, but what is the requirement which is there in the SA 240 is not there.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am. One last thing, I'm not asking any question. Just our past president, Devashish Mitra sir, was mentioning once, saying that audit is a serious business. If you are not, then get out of it. So that is one thing I just want to bring out to all the members here. And another thing is, I always say, before the regulator of the regulators start regulating the regulator, let the regulator regulate us. So let us not see that why peer review board is checking us or verifying us. So it is not that okay, only 3 partners or 5 partners firms are being audited. Now that proprietor firm who are getting into bank audit are supposed to get their firms peer reviewed. So it's a matter of time. Every single audit firm will be need to be peer reviewed. So let us get ourselves prepared. For that reason, we have this one-day training program. That's what I want to do. Thank you.
Truly sexy. Slowly, sooner or later, everybody we have to get in. So better we get into the proper processes. Thank you all. Thank you for the patient hearing.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That was an insightful session on documentation. That we CS as we'll make sure our audit is all done correctly, it will be verified, but many a times we will miss documentation process, or even we would have said we would have a kick-off meeting with our staff, but if we have done it orally, we don't have kept the physical documents with us. These kind of small things which is not provable in future, even peer reviewer cannot find it. So everything we should start, as a practice unit, we should start ourselves, then we can go for peer review ourselves. Sir wanted to talk something. No, just saying. No, sir, sorry. Okay, one more last time I'm here requesting, please scan the QR code and give your review of the session because it's almost mandatory. That is what the peer review board has told us. It's mandatory for everyone to give a review of that session. And from the morning we had 4 sessions plus our CCM discussion with all our chartered accountants about peer review. So all the sessions, I hope everything was all going in a smooth manner and well-planned manner. With this, I would like to thank peer review board, ICA Bengaluru branch, our committee members, mainly speakers, and most importantly, all our members who have attended the session. Thank you, one and all. Yeah, sorry. Before we leave, I would request CM Manjunath and my dear sir to give a memento to the speaker as token of gratitude. Thank you everyone.